Hey everybody, what is up? This is Anthony with the VR Game Rankings YouTube show, and of course this is our daily vlog series. This is episode 117 for Tuesday, March 13th, and I gotta tell you guys, not a lot of heavy-hitting news stories today. In fact, this is probably one of the worst news story days that I can remember in I don't know how long. I actually was debating with myself whether I should even do a show today. That's how bad these news stories are. I've checked out Upload VR, I've checked out Road to VR, I checked out all the various subreddits, and there just isn't much going on. It's just really dead out there, not much news. But you know what? I figure I might as well try to scrape together some semblance of a show, just put something out there so we can continue the process, and then hopefully tomorrow it will be a lot better. So my apologies for today's show. This is not going to be one of the better VR Game Rankings episodes, I can tell you right now, but you know, we got to deal with what we have, right? So let's go ahead and get into the first story that I have for you. And when this is the lead news story of the day, you know it is a slow day. And so what is the lead story of the day? Well, the biggest heavy-hitting news headline is, oh my God, the HTC Vive Pro is going to have a proprietary cable. Oh my God, stop the presses. I mean, we need to get interviews of all kinds of people. I need to have tweets. I need to have videos. We need to have all kinds of information about this proprietary HTC Vive Pro cable. So basically, what is this all about? Well, a number of various developers have been getting their HTC Vive Pros recently, and so we've started to learn a little bit of information about some of the cables, the link box, and some of the little minor things that go along with the HTC Vive Pro. We've been starting to learn a little bit more about this, and so this was one of the lead topics, the lead threads on the HTC Vive subreddit. A lot of people talking about this proprietary cable. Now, on the one hand, the proprietary cable is good in a couple of minor ways. And so what is it good for? Well, first of all, you have the link box, and the existing HTC Vive link box has 3 plugs on the front of it, and it has 3 plugs on the rear of it. Now, one of those plugs is for power, one is for HDMI, and one is for USB. And so the front of it has 3 plugs, the back of it has 3 plugs. Now, why is this a problem? Well, it's somewhat of a problem because somebody that isn't really paying attention could accidentally plug their headset into the wrong side, and the wires that are supposed to go to the computer could be going to the head. You know, they could basically get it backwards, is what I'm trying to say here, because there's 3 slots on the front, 3 slots on the back. So it's pretty easy for somebody that isn't paying close enough attention. They could plug the wrong cables into the wrong side. So that's kind of a big, I mean, it's not really a big deal, but by going with this one proprietary cable, you'll never make this mistake, because basically your headset the HMD can only be plugged into the single side that just has that one slot just for the headset cable. So I guess there's a bit of a benefit there. Now, is there any other benefit? Well, the fact that they have a proprietary cable, what they can do with that is they can combine all the different things that they need into that one solid cable, and it would be one single cable all the way through. Now, of course, those of us that have had the HTC Vive 3-in-1 slim cable, not the very original one, but the slim one, those of us that have had that, it's pretty much one cable for most of the distance of the way there. And then when you get to the very end, it breaks into the 3 different pieces. And I don't think that's really that big of a deal. So I don't know that there's much of an advantage here by just having one solid cable the whole way through. Okay, so those could be the possible advantages of a proprietary cable. Now, if we get into the topic of disadvantages, there's actually quite a few. And of course, the biggest overall disadvantage is, what if something goes wrong? What if something goes wrong with this cable? This is a proprietary cable. So if something goes wrong, you have no other choice really but to go through HTC. And as we've seen already countless times over and over again, HTC customer support is not the greatest in the world. In fact, they're pretty much right there with Comcast, okay? Not the greatest customer support. In fact, I have a personal story that goes along with this. When I got my HTC Vive, everything was good. You know, playing my HTC Vive for a long time, everything was great. I had it for like 9 months or whatever. And then my 3-in-1 cable basically died on me, okay? And this has happened to a lot of people. The original 3-in-1 cable that you had for the HTC Vive, there's been lots of problems with this, and a lot of people have had to replace that original 3-in-1 cable, and that's why they came out with a Slim. And there was a period of time, I went through a situation with HTC Vive support where I was unable to play my Vive for about 40 days. And it would have been way longer if I didn't take it upon myself to move heaven and earth to make sure that I would get a 3-in-1 cable a lot sooner. It could have been months and months and months if I didn't like press the issue. But I jumped through a number of hoops and basically pressed the issue, and then I did get another 3-in-1 cable and everything worked out. But there was a 40-day period where I was unable to play my HTC Vive. Now, technically, it wasn't a proprietary cable, so technically I could have bought a long HDMI cable, I could have bought a long USB cable, I could have somehow figured out how to do the power cable as well, and I could have basically plugged those into the link box, and I could have taken the little thing off of the top of the HMD where the cables plug into. I could have removed that off of there and kind of jerry-rigged those cables into that. That's really the hardest part. The hardest part is getting the cables inside the little slots that they have, even though it's not proprietary. Trying to find an HDMI cable that will squeeze in there, trying to find a USB cable that will squeeze in there is actually very difficult, because I did explore that during the 40-day period when I had no use of my Vive. And so the disadvantage of this proprietary cable is, if you wanted to try to jump through those hoops and try to make it happen with kind of a do-it-yourself solution temporarily, you're pretty much going to be boned. You're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to go through HTC. Now, what we have to hope is, with this proprietary cable, we have to hope that maybe there will be some outside companies that will look at this situation and be like, well, they got a proprietary cable now. We could probably reverse engineer that cable and make a substitute so that people will have an option to either extend that cable or replace it if something goes wrong. So possibly Monoprice or some other type of company out there that specializes in cables, they could look to do this. However, we don't know when that's going to happen. There could be a big delay between this being available and a company like Monoprice actually seeing an opportunity to provide the same kind of cable from another source outside of HTC. So that's kind of one of the downsides of having a proprietary cable. Not necessarily the most ideal situation, but again, this is not really a major disaster of any kind. Now, where this does kind of become an issue, though, is for those of you that string your wires up onto the ceiling. If you run your wires up onto the ceiling and you're using kind of like a pulley system, that we talked about recently, to create almost like a wireless situation without having a wireless situation, and having your wires up there and using this pulley system to kind of get your wire up off of the ground and not have to worry about your wire. The downside of that is that most people that are doing that, they're extending their cable, and so they're having a longer HDMI cable, a longer USB cable, a longer power cable, and then they're running it up onto the ceiling, which will give them enough slack to be able to do that. Now with this proprietary cable, how do you extend it? You know, until Monoprice or somebody out there comes out with an extension, you're kind of screwed a little bit. Now what you could do is you could extend the cables that go from your PC to the link box, and then maybe you could actually put your link box on the ceiling and actually have it stuck on the ceiling, and then that would give you enough of a slack to be able to do what you need to do with the proprietary cable. So there are some issues with that. And then also you have a handful of people out there where they actually have their computer tower in a completely different room, maybe an adjacent room or whatever. And the Vive area, the area where they're playing, is in a different location, and they just use really long extension wires to make that whole thing happen. And for people that are in that kind of a situation, the proprietary cable could be a bit of an issue as well. So that's basically the story of the proprietary cable. And I can't believe that I just squeezed 10 minutes out of talking about a proprietary cable. That is absolutely incredible. Okay, so story number 2 is, well, you know, speaking of this new link box, we do have a bit of information on the HTC Vive Pro Link box. And once again, you know, this is a major story. I mean, we got to go to video, we got to go to Twitter, we got to get everybody's reactions. This is a huge story. We need quotes from heads of company about, oh my God, this HTC Vive Link cable, you know, I mean, this link box, this is a huge deal. Again, obviously a very minor story, but this is what we're working with today. So as I was saying, there are a lot of developers in the industry that are getting their hands on Vive Pros right now. They're being sent Vive Pros, and they're kind of running them through their paces and figuring some different things out. And so one of the devs has tweeted out some pictures about this new link box and some of the features of this new link box. Now, this is Steve Bowler. He's one of the founders of Cloudgate Studio. This is the developer behind Island 359. And so he recently tweeted out some pictures of the new link box and a little bit of details on it. And so it kind of shows the proprietary cable going in one side. It also shows a bluish colored power button. So there's now a power button for the link box, which our current link box does not have a power button. And then also, if you're looking at the link box on the top of it, there's a tiny little LED light, a little green LED light that lets you know that the unit is powered on. And this is something that we don't have on our current link box as well. There's no power button, there's no power light. You know, it doesn't feature any of that, but this is going to feature that. And then more importantly is the back of the link box. There are 3 cables coming out of the back of the link box. One of them is for the AC adapter, which you're going to plug into a standard power outlet. And then one of them is USB. But the other one is not HDMI. It's actually DisplayPort. There is a mini DisplayPort plug that is on the back of the new link box, and it'll probably come with a short cable that converts the mini DisplayPort into a full-size DisplayPort connector, and then you just run whatever DisplayPort connector to the back of your video card, to the back of your GPU. And so there's not much of an issue here, because basically any GPU that you would be using with an HTC Vive Pro, you're going to have DisplayPort plugs available. In fact, you're probably going to have more of those plugs than you are HDMI plugs. So in a way, it's kind of a bonus that they're switching over to DisplayPort from HDMI. Now, is this a bandwidth issue? Are they doing this because of the higher resolution? No, they're not, because HDMI 1.4 does support enough bandwidth to handle this. And we know this from the Samsung Odyssey. The Samsung Odyssey uses a regular HDMI cable, a 1.4 HDMI cable that does support that bandwidth. So it's not a bandwidth issue. It's just basically a design issue to not have HDMI on the back of it. So, you know, not really a big deal, although this could be somewhat of a big deal, again, from the standpoint where I was talking about somebody that has their PC located in another room. Let's say they bought a really high-end long HDMI cable that works really well. Well, now there isn't an HDMI plug on the back of your, on the back of the Link box, so you're going to need some kind of little DisplayPort adapter, but not that big of a deal. But yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with some of those little details on the HTC Vive Pro. Okay, so let's go ahead and bounce into story number 3. This is another big banger of a story. Actually, this is a legitimate story, but it's a little bit old. This is a story from last week that I ultimately didn't end up using last week, but because it's so dead, I thought, oh, let me look at some of these old stories and see if any of them have any relevance towards anything. And so this story is Microsoft. There was a blog post last week where they were talking about how they are going to have a spring update that could improve Steam VR performance for their mixed reality headsets. And so this is a blog update from Donna Sarkar, a software engineer for the Windows and Devices group. She posted this back on March 7th about an upcoming spring update for the Windows mixed reality platform that is going to improve a few minor things. Now, the big news story here is they claim that they've improved Steam VR performance for games that you're playing through Steam VR by allowing them to use significantly lower video RAM usage. So not sure exactly how they're achieving this, but apparently with significantly lower video RAM usage, they've been able to bump up the performance in Steam VR games. So if you happen to have an Acer HMD, or you have a Lenovo or a Dell or Samsung or any one of these HMDs, you might get a little bit of a performance boost in Steam VR games once this spring update goes live. Now, this update is only available for like insiders right now that have a very specific build of Windows, and then it will eventually be pushed through to everybody else. So we're going to have to wait a little bit. Another thing that they've added is haptic feedback to the motion controllers for Steam VR games. And this is huge. Like, this is a really big story from the standpoint that, are you telling me that all this time, if you played a Steam VR game on one of these Windows mixed reality headsets, you didn't get any rumble? There was no rumble for Steam VR games. You would have to get the game through, say, like the Microsoft Store or whatever for it to feature rumble. Like, that is crazy that has, I mean, we're here in the month of March. These headsets came out like mid-October. I would have been hella pissed, me personally. I like rumble. I think rumble is important. I think rumble is a huge feature because, you know, you're in a game and you're shooting a gun. You should feel some type of feedback when you're shooting a gun, or you should feel some type of feedback when you get hit by an enemy's bullet or whatever it happens to be. There should be some kind of feedback. I could not imagine playing Steam VR games for all these months with no rumble, if that's what they're talking about, unless the haptic feedback is separate from rumble, or if that's what they basically mean there. And then one other little bonus that is coming to Microsoft mixed reality headsets with this update is that there is going to be a new environment available. So we all know about the Cliff House environment, but Microsoft said all along that there is going to be a lot of different environments besides just Cliff House. That was just the first one. There's going to be a lot of different environments that are going to be coming over however long time period we're looking at here. But the first one that they're going to be rolling out is called Skyloft. And so this is going to be a new environment that is going to be included with this spring update. So a little bit later. I don't know if this is coming later in the month of March or in April, or when exactly this is going to hit for everybody out there, not just insiders that have a special Windows build. There will be some of these new features that will be coming, and it will improve a few things here and there. So that's good news for everybody that has the Microsoft mixed reality headsets. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about before I bounced out of here is I just wanted to mention that if you go to the VR Game Rankings website, we have recently updated the top 20 most wanted Oculus Rift games and the top 20 most wanted HTC Vive games. Those have been updated. And then we've added another ranking where it's the top 40 most wanted Oculus Rift games, and a top 40 most wanted HTC Vive games is also going to be coming in the next couple of days. But that one's not up there yet. But the Oculus one is up there. And the reason that we put that up there is because, like what I've been talking about, there are so many games that are coming this spring and also early summer. So many VR games are on their way over the next 6 to 9 months that we had to actually make a top 40, and it's a pretty legitimate top 40. And, you know, I can mention some of the games here. I mean, at the top of the list, we got like Skyrim VR expected probably in November. We got the Half-Life 2 VR mod that we're still waiting for. We're hoping April 2018 for that. Budget cuts, we're hoping April 2018. Marvel Powers United, we're hoping that this is going to show up at GDC as one of these demos, and maybe we'll get a date. Hopefully the date might be in April, say April 2018 for that. Resident Evil 7, we still hold out hope that Capcom is bringing a Resident Evil 7 to the PC VR platforms. I don't imagine that they're simply going to leave money on the table. That doesn't make sense. So eventually we're going to hear something about that. My hope is that maybe they're really redoing the game and adding legit motion controller support as well as room scale. That would be awesome. Echo Combat. You know, Echo Combat is coming. Now, we don't have a lot of information on Echo Combat. We basically have one screenshot. You have that kind of teaser trailer that doesn't actually show anything of this game, Echo Combat. But it's kind of like, you know how there's that game Space Junkies, which is also on this list, by the way. Echo Combat might be kind of competing head-to-head with Space Junkies because it's kind of a similar idea there. So, you know, we're looking forward to Echo Combat as well. Seeking Dawn from Multiverse Entertainment, we still have a lot of excitement for that. Transference by Spectravision, Firmament, Beat Saber, which I'm super excited for, Vacation Simulator, Apex Construct, which is coming next week. We're excited for that. Megaton Rainfall, Virtual Reality Football Club, Torn, Windlands 2, the list goes on and on. There's like 40 different games that we're looking forward to. In fact, there were even more than 40. I might be able to even come up with like a top 50 list. So it's kind of cool that we have so many games that are headed in the spring and summer. So that will be awesome. But anyway, guys, this show actually ended up being rather long. I know it's quite boring, not the most interesting subjects on offer for today, but sometimes this is going to happen. And so it's either don't have a show at all or just kind of try to make, you know, if you get lemons, try to make lemonade is kind of the idea here. So tried to do the best I could do with what we had on offer. And hopefully tomorrow, we'll get some better news stories, maybe some new game announcements or something like that. We'll have to see what happens, but that's going to go ahead and do it. This has been episode 117 of our daily vlog series for Tuesday, March 13th. Everybody have an awesome Tuesday, and I will see everybody tomorrow on Wednesday. Take it easy. Later.